What really happens when a global star, standing at the peak of dazzling lights and roaring crowds, chooses to apologize? Not for a mistake, but for caring too deeply. Why does a moment meant for pure euphoria suddenly transform into an unexpected emotional silence? And most striking of all, what does that apology mean to thousands standing in the rain, looking at Jungkook with feelings that can no longer be defined simply as fans? That night was never meant to become something so deeply moving. There was no script suggesting that heavy rain would turn into the backdrop of one of the most emotional moments of the so-called Redefining World Tour. Yet in that unpredictability, something far greater than a concert began to take shape. The rain fell relentlessly, soaking the stage, softening the sound, and slowly transforming the atmosphere into something more intimate, more real. As if everyone present was being forced to feel every second more deeply. Amid the pouring rain, Jungkook remained on stage. Completely drenched, his black hoodie clinging to his body, his hair falling across his face, yet still carrying that same warmth in his expression. There was no visible discomfort, no complaint, just an artist continuing to give everything, as if the rain were part of the performance rather than an obstacle. But what made that night unforgettable was not the performance. It was what came after. As the music faded and the lights softened, he lifted the microphone with a hand that trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from emotion that could no longer be hidden. In the sudden quiet, he began to speak. His voice was soft, nearly swallowed by the rain, yet clear enough to make thousands pause, listen, and feel. He mentioned Kim Namjoon, recalling a message previously shared, as if trying to connect the emotional thread that had been woven throughout the night. Then simply, he said something that should have been ordinary. "I love you." But that night, those words felt different. Because he didn't stop there, he moved into something unexpected. He spoke about worry, about the rain, about the fans who had stood for hours without shelter, about the possibility of them getting sick the next day. And then, without warning, without dramatization, he apologized, not for an imperfect performance, not for any technical mistake, but because they had to stand there in the rain for him. That was the moment everything shifted. The armies who had been cheering fell into a quiet stillness, not from a loss of excitement, but because they were touched by something deeper than entertainment. There was an unspoken pause, a shared moment where thousands felt the same thing at once, that what they were witnessing was no longer just a concert, but a real, fragile, deeply human connection. A video later shared by a fan account on X captured the moment vividly. Raindrops on Jungkook's face seemed to amplify the emotion he was feeling. Purple lights glowed behind him, casting a cinematic atmosphere, while a thin mist wrapped around the stage, making it all feel like a scene too perfect to be accidental. But what stood out the most was not the visual. It was the honesty in his words. He spoke about how much he enjoyed performing in the rain, how he actually liked that moment. Yet at the same time, he couldn't ignore his concern for the fans. He asked them to take care of themselves, to be careful on their way home, to not fall ill. A simple message, yet filled with meaning. And that is where the real surprise lies. In an entertainment world often defined by distance between artist and audience, moments like this are rare. Unscripted, unmanufactured, not designed to go viral, yet becoming viral precisely because of its authenticity. The thousands of interactions that flooded the post were not just support, but reflections of a shared feeling. That they were not only loving an idol, but being loved in return. The Redefining World Tour may go on to deliver countless spectacular moments, grand stages, breathtaking choreography, world-class production. But among all of that, this moment in the rain will likely remain the most unforgettable, not because of its scale, but because of its simplicity. Because in the middle of imperfection, under heavy rain, came a powerful reminder that the bond between Jungkook and ARMY is not built on perfection, but on care, empathy, and a sincerity that cannot be replicated. And perhaps that is why, when he apologized that night, the world did not see it as weakness, but as proof of a very different kind of strength. And as the echoes of that moment began to spread beyond the venue, beyond the city where the concert took place, something larger slowly took shape. A collective narrative no longer owned only by those who were physically present, but also by millions who witnessed it through their screens. Clips uploaded on X didn't just go viral. They became a shared space of reflection, where people tried to understand what they were truly feeling as they watched Jungkook standing in the rain, speaking in a voice nearly swallowed by the downpour. At first glance, many assumed it was simply a romanticized concert moment, an aesthetic coincidence that happened to look beautiful on camera. But the more the footage was replayed, the clearer it became that something deeper was at work. There was a sincerity that couldn't be fabricated, pauses in his voice that couldn't be scripted, and expressions that seemed to emerge without filter or strategy. Some observers even began to interpret the moment as a form of nonverbal communication far more powerful than any long speech delivered on stage. In those few seconds of silence, in the way Jungkook looked at the rain-soaked audience, a connection formed that required no additional words. A quiet understanding that, despite standing on different sides of the stage, they were taking care of each other in their own ways. And that is precisely where its complexity lies. In an industry that often demands flawless perfection, this moment revealed the opposite, that imperfection, when paired with honesty, can become far more powerful. The rain, which should have been a disruption, became a medium. It didn't just drench the stage, it dissolved the invisible boundary between artist and audience. The reaction from ARMY evolved into something beyond simple support. Many began sharing their personal experiences from that night. How they stayed in the rain not out of obligation, but out of a desire to be part of the same moment. Some said they didn't even feel the cold. Others admitted they only realized the depth of that bond when they heard his apology. At the same time, broader discussions began to emerge about what it truly means for an artist to care for their fans. Is it a form of responsibility? Or something more personal, more emotional? In Jungkook's case, many believe it reflects how he views that relationship, not as something one-sided, but as a mutual exchange. This perspective is inseparable from the dynamic built over years with BTS. The group is known not only for their music, but for the way they engage with their audience, creating a space where emotions can be shared openly, without fear of judgment. And that night, under relentless rain, those values felt more tangible than ever. Yet what continues to make this moment resonate is not just its emotional weight, but its implications. It raises questions about the future of live performances. Will audiences begin to expect deeper emotional intimacy from artists? Or was this something that could only happen under specific circumstances, with a specific person? There are no definitive answers. But one thing is certain. What happened that night has left a mark that will not easily fade. It is no longer just a part of a tour, it has become part of a collective memory, one that will be revisited, retold, and perhaps longed for. And at the center of it all remains Jungkook. Not because he tried to be, but because his presence naturally drew every emotion toward him. He didn't just perform, he felt. And in doing so, he made others feel the same. Perhaps that is why, when he apologized, the world did not see it as a formality. There was no distance, no rigid script. Just a person standing in the rain, speaking to those he cares about in the most honest way he could, and within that honesty, the moment found its power. A power not born from volume or spectacle, but from something far simpler, sincerity, offered without conditions. And when that night finally came to an end, the rain began to ease, but the emotional imprint it left behind only grew stronger. Many walked home in soaked clothes and tired bodies, yet with hearts that felt full, as if they had just experienced something no grand spectacle could ever recreate. Along the journey back, Jungkook's words lingered, not as a speech but as a feeling that stayed. Amid the heavy rain, between cheers that slowly faded into silence, a moment was born that did not need a grand stage to be remembered. Because in the end, what stays is not just the performance, but how Jungkook made everyone feel seen, protected, and not alone.